Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Glad to have you aboard this evening as we get set up to recap what happened yesterday, in which the Edmonton Oilers, there's some situational problems we got to fix there post-game following the Bruins, because there's a lot about the Oilers team that we already knew that got exposed quite heavily in that Boston Bruins game last night in a 6-5 overtime loss. I know kind of the whole sentiment around that game is we played really poor, but we got a point. That's what we got to celebrate. We got to take it home and just, you know what, we keep climbing up the standings. That's all that matters. Well, friends, the thing here is we're a couple of weeks away from the trade deadline. We have got to figure out what we're going to do with this roster, and the Boston Bruins showed us a couple of reasons we got to rethink possibly where we're looking in terms of acquisitions. Friends, the Edmonton Oilers, obviously, there's a knock against them, right? They're small. They don't play hard enough. They got some leaky goaltending. Defense sometimes is great, sometimes is bad. And, technically with that said, you could find 5 or 6 players out there that would solve a problem, maybe 2 problems for the Edmonton Oilers quite easily. But when you look at it, you got maybe 3, 4, 5 holes on an Edmonton Oilers roster, depending on how hardcore you go. The Oilers are bad versus how hardcore you go with the rose-colored glasses when it comes to our roster. And I really found some comfort in a conversation between Bob Stauffer and John Shannon on today's Oilers Now edition, and two, just kind of sitting here thinking, okay, with trade deadlines coming, at least we evaluated against a measuring stick team like the Bruins. Now, where do we go, right? Last year, after the Bruins 2 games we had there late in the year, we're like, that's our Stanley Cup preview, right? It's the Oilers versus the Bruins. There has not been 2 better games in the NHL this season last year than the Oilers and Bruins from an Oilers fan perspective. Well, again, last night, disaster class for the Oilers for most of it, but they still were able to do exactly what the Oilers do: come up late, tie the game, try to win a hockey game in overtime. Didn't pan out that way, but that's fine. Friends, what we'll talk about first here is the Shannon and Stauffer conversation on Oilers Now this afternoon. Basically talking about a slide I'll have for you in a moment. Premise was the Oilers are not aggressive or physical enough to get calls. So what you saw in that game against the Bruins bottom 2 lines just punished the Oilers all night long, right? The Bruins were rolling 4 and we were rolling, maybe, you look at the ice times, maybe 2 3/4 or 2 2/3, right? Technically speaking. So for the Oilers, there was only 4 or 5 guys that were pluses in that game. Everybody else was either an even or else a negative in the plus minus column. And you kind of look at how that all lines up. As the Oilers got exposed in the usual areas, the Oilers, when we're saying they got exposed, got exposed. So that's kind of the tough part for us. But you look at this here. I want to talk about this. Before last night, the Oilers were first in expected goals for 5-on-5 and 30th in power play time. So for the Oilers, when you're saying they don't play physical enough, they don't play hard enough to get calls, right? There you have it, right? You go against a hard-nosed, big, bad Boston Bruins team, and you lose 6-5. The difference in that is Corey Perry getting under the skin, right? He was in a scrap last night. Obviously, took the instigator, but still, where would the Oilers be if Corey Perry didn't drop the gloves that game? Things were going south before he dropped the gloves, and obviously things finished a lot better than they could have if he hadn't shed the mitts. So you take solace in that, okay, maybe, the Oilers have a little bit extra in the lineup now because of Corey Perry. Corey Perry's also in his late 30s. You can't rely on him to be doing that every night. So when I say the Oilers got exposed, is yes, we know where the strengths on this roster are, but the Bruins also showed us a lot where our weaknesses on this roster are. And for a lot of people, everybody says the Oilers can't win with Stuart Skinner. Again, it doesn't matter if the defense is on or off. When you talk about Stuart Skinner, my biggest gripe this season with how he's played is just basically saying, don't let in the soft ones, right? That goes back to Koskinen. That goes back to Smith. That goes back again with Jack Campbell. Is Stuart Skinner in that Bruins game made a million good saves, right? It seemed like every time I looked up looking at the TV at the bar there last night is, oh, there's another good save. There's another good save. There's a replay of a good save. But you let in the soft ones, right? The Brad Marchand goal, not so good, right? There's so many things that it's just tough. Those first two were really ugly, actually, I believe, as well. So first three overall, and I mean, Stuart Skinner, when Bob Stauffer and Cam Moon are sitting there on the radio broadcast saying, look, they know that Stuart Skinner would like to have had a goal or two back. When you've got a goalie wants a goal or two back, that just at the end of the day comes down to his fundamentals, making sure he's got the confidence and making sure he's well rested. We've already had that conversation, right? Stuart Skinner's getting run into the ground as every good Oilers goalie does when the Oilers want to go on a deep playoff run. Cam Talbot in 16-17, run into the ground. Of course, you think back to Mike Smith, run into the ground as well for his age at least. And then as well, you look here for Stuart Skinner the past 2 years playing the lion's share of games when his body is just not to that NHL level of being able to weather that many games. So when you look at this, it's all about the coaching is who everybody tried to blame as the decision maker for the goaltending starting. But like I said, I got to figure out who's actually making these decisions, because you can't tell me that Todd McClellan and Chris Knobloch and Jay Woodcroft all had the same idea: run your starter into the ground. That's the only way to win a Stanley Cup during the season. Run them into the ground and then play them as the be-all, end-all in the playoffs. That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't seem like a really good tactic, and I don't know why three coaches would choose to do that. So, again, the Oilers get exposed for not necessarily saying not starting Calvin Pickard against the Bruins, but I'm saying you should have started Pickard against Arizona, had Stewie very fresh for this one against the Boston Bruins yesterday, and I would like to see a replay of how that goes through if Stuart Skinner's sharpened on his game against the Bruins, as opposed to having played against Arizona in what was a circus game to some extent for the Oilers in that second period. And again, the Oilers get exposed in the second period as well against the Bruins. So you look at this, there's so many things here that the Boston Bruins just showed us. And the trade deadline acquisitions, right? Nick Bjugstad I thought could be a solution, but Puckpedia the other day had a post out that there's no retention allowed on Nick Bjugstad to the Edmonton Oilers this season because he was on our roster as of June 30th last year. And because of that, right, that's what negated the Tony DeAngelo trade between Philadelphia and Carolina, I believe. So there's a ton of things here for the Oilers that they have to look at here going into the trade deadline based on what the Bruins did to us last night. And again, that is with the rose-colored glasses back on. Not that I have them anymore, but to throw them back on. We got a point last night, and there's not much to complain about other than we lost a really good game, technically speaking, for entertainment value against the Boston Bruins. So take of what you will, but there's a whole bunch of talking points here we can go over. And the Oilers just not getting into the physical play enough, especially against a team like Boston. You got to go in there and get in the trenches and just absolutely outwork them. And unfortunately, it was Boston who did that the majority of the game. They come away with a 6-5 win. What do you say? We're done and dusted. So, friends, I'm Tyson, this is Dolynny TV. Thanks for being aboard this evening. I'm going to let you go. And I guess to say, I will see you at Rogers Place tomorrow night as we take on the Minnesota Wild. Sitting in behind. For those of you watching on the broadcast, you should be able to see yours truly sitting behind the Minnesota bench tomorrow night. We'll make sure to get to the thanks as long as I'm able to do that allowingly. Thank the friends of mine that allowed me to have seats tomorrow night, and we'll go from there. Friends, I'm Tyson. This is Dolynny TV. I am up on out of here.